So, folks, I need to ask the question, where did the transgender movement go wrong? I'm seeing so many different, clearly unaffiliated people on the internet asking, where did the trans movement go wrong? I mean, after all, trans people are too unstable to be in the military these days, according to the current US government, which would never lie to us. And after all, wait a minute.
That the Pentagon's ban on transgender people serving in the military is likely unconstitutional.
What?
Are we finally getting a trans wrongs segment?
We are finally getting the, we're not going to talk about trans rights here. We're only going to talk about trans wrongs. Sort of, kind of, not really, but maybe. So, yeah, it turns out an appeals court is overturning the whole kicking trans people out of the military thing. Because, again, it's just discrimination on the basis of sex. It's not a difficult thing to really wrap your head around. But hey, it's nice to talk about a win right at the top of the segment, you know? We are, however, living in a time when people are getting radicalized to the idea that, like, well, trans people just are inherently less people-y than normal people, right? Like, conservatives in particular seem to have really bought into this idea that trans women, trans men, non-binary folks, we're not really people who deserve the same rights and liberties as other types of people. Instead, we're sleeper agents that must be denied bathroom access. Otherwise, we will somehow aid China in its secret takeover of the United States. Right? And yeah, they frame it as like normal people deserve rights and trans people ain't normal. Right? That's their reasoning. And I think like a good example of this thinking at work here is this particular incident that occurred a couple days ago at Cedar Point in Ohio. Man arrested for pulling down trans woman's skirt in front of children at Ohio amusement park. Police say the 18-year-old approached the woman from behind and exposed her body to onlookers, including children at Cedar Point. Because, again, they don't really see us as people. They see us as, like, carnival attractions, or, like, standard bearers for some kind of ideological movement that they disagree with, right? Because this 18-year-old doesn't just exist in a vacuum. Right? It isn't like an 18-year-old man doesn't just decide to sexually assault a random stranger in the broad daylight at an amusement park surrounded by witnesses. Right? Like that doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Something has to go on to convince that 18-year-old man that that's the correct thing to do. Right? I guess this story in particular, which, for the record, they did arrest that person. Like, they arrested him. They're charging him with several different crimes. It just got me thinking, like, what has to have gone wrong? What has to have been, like, a component of radicalizing these people? And if you guys are familiar with my content, you guys know that I've talked a lot about anti-trans commentators and folks who talk about trans people. And I wanted to take a look at one content creator in particular that I haven't talked about before. And this guy goes under the name Ken LaCorte. Some of you might remember him if you've been paying attention to politics, especially over like the last 8 or so years. And
trans folks, people or props for bigots to harass? These questions and more answered now only on riverboat.gg.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Only us. We're the only ones answering it. Yes, we are going to be talking about the YouTube channel Elephants in Rooms. Because Ken LaCorte has a channel called Elephants in Rooms, where the basic premise is he, as a real hard-nosed journalist type, goes deep onto issues that other people are too afraid to talk about, right? And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this particular video is because Ken LaCorte, in this video, basically lays out what killed the transgender movement. Like, that's the name of the video, right? And it has 2.1 million views. It was uploaded about a year ago. And I thought to myself, that's a lot of views. You know, this is clearly resonating with somebody. And I also just want to start out by taking a quick look at who is Ken LaCorte exactly, right? Who is he? Because I don't know Ken LaCorte from a hole in the ground. Well, Ken LaCorte got his start at Fox News, and he wound up being an executive at Fox News, in fact. And if you are familiar with the events of the last several years at all, then you'll note that he was pretty pivotal in a couple of fairly large happenings and goings-on. In particular, he's the executive who made the call to try and kill the Stormy Daniels story over at Fox. Falzone and LaCorte argued that Fox News should lift the NDA so the full story could come out. Rather, yeah, here we go. Nick Ritchie, who claimed to be one of the sources for the Falzone story, called LaCorte's account complete bullshit, adding, "Fox News was culpable. I voted for Trump and I like Fox, but they did their own catch and kill on the story to protect him." And, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. In 2022, LaCorte defended his decision, saying that Daniels and Falzone were not interested in publishing the scandal, but were using the media to extort Trump. So he helped try and kill the story at Fox to prevent the Stormy Daniels story from being a thing, right? So that's back in 2019, right? Or that this comes out. Then you also have this bit of his history where in 2019, the New York Times caught LaCorte using Macedonian troll farms in order to juice his different independent news initiatives, specifically with conservative edition news and liberal edition news. So basically, he was in connection with these Macedonian troll farms in order to massively inflate the numbers of his different news outlets, which is pretty interesting, of course, as well. And it got so bad that Facebook shut down the pages for these different outlets. And also, he was one of the first guys to publish the Hunter Biden laptop story. Because of course he was. And also, we get to this part, which I think is fascinating. In 2025, Rolling Stone reported that Rumen Naumovsky, a Macedonian citizen who had never visited the United States, had previously worked for LaCorte. Naumovsky operates the X accounts Defiant L's and Resist the Mainstream, which together have more than 2 million followers and have been amplified by figures including Elon Musk, Nancy Mace, Mike Lee, Ron Watkins, and Eli Crane. Both accounts focus on American politics, frequently alleging corruption and election fraud by Democrats. LaCorte has publicly described Naumovsky as a close friend and written about Naumovsky's attempts to emigrate. This is a former employee of LaCorte's who is now a close personal friend. And this guy previously has dealings with Macedonian troll farms, and this guy just happens to be a Macedonian citizen. Let's take a look. What are these accounts posting? Just as an FYI, you know, we can go take a look at Resist the Mainstream, and it's Elon Musk is great. He's so amazing. President Trump confirms there are no troops going to Beirut. You've got, RJ Scaringe predicts the vast majority of drives can be and should be autonomous within the next 5 years. Yeah, it's just AI slop. Oh, look. Fox News host announces major personal update. Comments emerge on case involving Jill Biden's ex-husband. Like, it's just kind of conservo slop, right? But what about Defiant L's? What is this? Oh, the media is pathetic. Want to slow climate change? Stop having babies. Only immigrants can reverse America's baby bust. Trump was right. Germany was wrong. First on NATO, now on trade. Germany versus sanity. Oh, look. Abdul Al Sayed, who is a Muslim, celebrates Pride. This is the first day of Pride, a celebration of rights. I got to sit with the first same-sex couple, Glenna and Marcia, ever to be married under our state. Imagine believing this. Or, you got some interesting stuff here. Just a lot of slop. I mean, for God's sakes, you're posting Bill O'Reilly in 2026. It's weird. Man, it is weird out here. There was a post that I was going to show, but appears to have been taken down, of the account being horrified that gay people are singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Maybe it's not... oh, no, here it is. Is this what insanity looks like? Boston celebrates Pride Month, singing and raising an LGBTQ flag. Oh no. Insanity. Grr. I'm just so mad. I'm so mad at all of these ladies singing the Wizard of Oz song. Grr. I have strong feelings about musical theater. Grr. Very bizarre. Right? But not really unexpected. And we kind of have all of this happening, right? Oh, okay, so where does that leave us with elephants in rooms? Well, let's take a look. Now that we know kind of where Ken LaCorte is coming from, let's take a look. Let's jump in. What killed the transgender movement?
In just 10 years, we've seen one of the fastest social changes in American history. Among young people calling themselves transgender, it exploded from barely measurable numbers to 3%, with another 2% who aren't sure. That's millions of young people. But this isn't...
Whoa. Exploded to 3% of the American population calling themselves transgender. Let's just take a quick look at that exactly. Where exactly are you getting this? Where are you getting this particular information, right? Let's take a look at the UCLA School of Law Williams Institute. How many adults and youth identify as transgender in the United States? Let's see, 3/4 of people aged 13 and older who identify as transgender are under 35. 1/4 of individuals who identify as transgender are between 13 and 17. Among transgender adults, roughly 1/3 identify as trans women, 1/3 identify as trans men, and 1/3 identify as non-binary. 2.8 million people aged 13 plus identify as transgender in the United States, which I just want to point out let's take a look. Wait a minute. So when we're talking about 3.3%, we're talking about 3.3% of the youth are thinking they might be transgender, which is fine. But that 3% number is not the number for the entire country overall, because the entirety of the adult population in the United States is less than 1% of the population. So already we're in a weird territory of half-truths.
Just about numbers. It's about how a movement gained unprecedented power quickly. It reshaped America, from medical practice to language, even how society views basic concepts like gender. The elephant in the room is how this movement gained so much power.
Also, basic concepts like gender is doing a lot of intellectual legwork that it doesn't really deserve. Because gender isn't a basic concept. It's actually a very complicated concept, right? And one would know that if they looked at any kind of history about different gender ideas about gender, right? If you start, for example, looking at the history even of medieval Europe, you find different ideas based upon different cultures, different, political entities. you find differences in the idea of how gender functions, what gender is, what different gender roles allow you to do or not do, and that changes over time as you track different societies, right?
So quickly, and why it's now heading downhill. I'm Ken LaCorte. I dig into uncomfortable topics and give you as fair and straightforward answers as I can, especially when they challenge the mainstream narrative. In the next few minutes, we'll look at the movement's dramatic rise, especially among females, how a perfect storm of forces...
Okay, so whenever I hear the caveat, especially among females, that indicates to me that we're going to get some irreversible damage mentions, and I just want to point out before... I have not watched this, okay? I'm going into this blind. Irreversible damage is written by a lawyer who knows nothing about trans issues, knows nothing about trans biology, and is just kind of going off of her internal assumptions about what trans people are and how trans people function.
Created that rise, and how activists went too far, and why 2024 became its turning point. Historically, transgenders were a tiny fraction of the population.
Yeah, we're almost certainly going to hear about like social contagion, like I've mentioned this in a couple of recent videos, but social contagion is this idea that is talked about a lot when it comes to trans people in particular, but it's just recycled rhetoric that comes directly out of the eugenicist movement. It was adopted by the Nazis predominantly. It's part of what led to the disabled being killed during the Holocaust. It's part of what led to LGBTQ people being either killed or, sent to re-education to make them straight, or at least straight passable, or got them sent directly to the front to be used as cannon fodder. This idea was that gay people, trans people, people who were incapable of reproducing or whose reproduction would harm the gene pool in the eyes of eugenicists, they were considered people to be purged because if they were allowed to exist, they could pollute future generations or spread their social disease of being gay or trans, right? That was a direct response, especially within Nazi Germany, to the ideas of like the Institute for Sexology in the Weimar Republic, right? These ideas that were challenging traditional gendered ideology, they were considered too radical, and if they were allowed to exist, they would infect other people across Germany and destroy German civilization. And if all of that sounds very similar to how Republicans talk about trans people today, you would be correct, because much of Republican rhetoric in 2026 is simply recycled from fascist authoritarian regimes. It's not a spurious accusation to just say, well, the Trump administration talks about this like the Nazis. It's like a direct one-to-one parallel. And I could go on about that, but we need to get back to this video.
In fact, before 2010, most medical literature estimated that gender dysphoria affected about 1 in 10,000 biological males, and even fewer females. These numbers held steady for decades, and medical and psychological transitions were viewed as last resorts.
Okay, they're still considered last resorts. Medical and psychological transitions. Okay, let's just let's actually slow it down even further.
For decades. And
gender dysphoria affected about 1 in every 10,000 biological males and even fewer females. That claim is based off of old and faulty data. That's the problem. We got newer information, and we're then able to update like the kind of predictive models we had, right? Like that's what happened. We had shoddy information, we got better information, and we updated like best practices as a result. It's not a conspiracy. It's not difficult to understand. It's not difficult to follow. That's just how medical science works.
Medical and psychological transition.
Okay. Now, this one, medical and psychological transitions were viewed as last resorts. They're still viewed that way. There's a reason you have to go to the doctor in order to get a medical, like the means to medically transition. But also, what does it mean to say psychological transitions were viewed as last resorts? Because historically, those have always been the first resort. Because when you are a trans person, you have control over your own mind. You are able to say, well, I'm going to consider myself this. I'm going to adopt a new name. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. What they mean by psychological transition is just socially transitioning, like changing your name or trying out a nickname, or like it. That's it. That's all it means. It means trying out using different pronouns. And I know that even mentioning pronouns will cause some people to go into a blind rage.
Fucking pronouns!
But all that a psychological transition is just recognizing that you might be trans and experimenting with what that might mean by adopting a new name or a new presentation or what have you. Short of any kind of direct medical intervention in the form of medication or surgeries, for example.
Were viewed as last resorts. Then the numbers just exploded. But it wasn't just those numbers that changed. It was the very nature of who identified as transgender. Historically, the vast majority of transgenders were biological males going to female.
Also, just as an FYI, if you're conservative and you somehow stumbled onto this, right? If you ever hear someone refer to transgender people as transgenders, that's a massive red flag, because transgender, I mean, let me put it this way. It would be like if somebody was making a video about the intricacies of like race relations in America and started calling black people the blacks. It's a big red flag that indicates the person who's speaking is not somebody who should be taken very seriously for their intellectual rigor.
And now that pattern has completely reversed. There are more women seeking to become men, and among teens, biological females dominate the numbers. This isn't just in America. Similar patterns emerged across the entire Western...
By the way, the images that just flashed on screen are of a trans boy who's accepted by his Republican parents. And I remember this because I covered this story multiple years ago, and it was covered on Fox News. It was actually like kind of some heartwarming coverage about like an accepting family despite like their politics, and just kind of goes to show that like the current Republican Party of today like wants to kill the Republican Party of like 2 or 3 years ago. Anything that isn't obsequiously kowtowing to Trump must be purged.
World, especially in countries with strong social media usage. Sweden saw 1,500% in teen girls trying to get medical treatments for transgenderism. And in the UK, referrals to gender clinics rose 4,400% over a decade. A fundamental debate is why. Were these transgenders always there but finally free to be themselves?
Were these transgenders always there but finally free to be themselves? I mean, it certainly helps to be yourself if by, being yourself, you aren't like murdered when you go out in public. Like that helps, like, which is kind of what would happen to you in the past, right? Like there is now a, hey, don't murder trans people policy in the United States, at least for now. And that generally helps trans people to like come out and exist.
Or was there something else going on driving this growth? This transformation, especially among young people, it didn't happen by accident. It was a perfect storm of forces that came together. It started with the success of the gay rights movement. After winning the battle for marriage and legal equality, many of these same activists and organizations shifted their focus to transgender rights. And with them, they brought proven tactics and an infrastructure for social change. It also coincided with the anti-bullying movement in America. When I was in school in the 70s,
oh my God. Oh my God. It's because we stopped bullying the queers, and now they're not afraid anymore, and they're becoming adults who are openly gay. That's what has caused all of the transes. I can't believe it.
And 80s, it was all about don't do drugs. In my children's years, it was all about fighting bullies and being tolerant to all. First up was the battle over words, because winning the language war was crucial. All activists understand that. They know that by controlling the conversation, they can control the debate itself. The transgender world successfully shifted the conversation by redefining words like men and women to center on gender identity, not biological sex. Even basic language was rewritten, with terms like ladies and gentlemen being called exclusionary and being swapped out. They replaced.
Can I just say, I love, like, the level of fear-mongering in this. You can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore. It's exclusionary. And it's just like, it's not difficult to just say something else. Like, number one, people still say ladies and gentlemen. Like, you can still say that. You can also say ladies, gentlemen, and gentle thems. Like, it's not difficult to just be slightly more considerate. The reason the guidelines exist is to make people aware that there are ways that they could change their language in order to make more people feel welcome. That's not difficult. Yeah, you could also say ladies, gentlemen, and other distinguished guests. Absolutely. Like, this is just social niceties. It's not the collapse of Western civilization. Like, the thing that gets me is that conservatives will throw a shit fit for over a decade about being asked one time to, like, use slightly more inclusive language. Not even that there's, like, a law that they have to, just, like, being asked. Just the ask itself invades their minds, takes it over, and makes them feel like, you want to take away my freedom! You want to take away my freedom! Like, that's crazy. No one's trying to take away your freedom. You have the right to be exclude people if you want to. But if the goal is to build, like, a loving, careful environment that actually shows deference to people like children, being more inclusive in your language is nice. It's helpful, you know? Inclusion is pretty important. Can you show your tits? If you Venmo me $10,000 right now, I might consider it. Not legally binding.
Replace clinical-sounding terms like sex change with gender-affirming healthcare, obscuring the medical reality of surgeries and hormone treatments. I mean, think about it.
Obscuring the medical reality. No one is obscuring I've been through this process, okay? I went through this process in the easiest way that you can go through this process, right? Through, like, essentially informed consent, where you go into a clinic, you say, I would like HRT because I am trans and I'd like to transition. And, like, a doctor asks you several different questions and then is able to say, well, we'll do your blood work and see if you're all good on the blood work, then we'll write you a prescription, right? That isn't terribly difficult to get as an adult. But the doctor still does sit down with you multiple times in order to basically go over, here is what these pills will do. Here's what these injections will do. Here is how you will be affected by this. Here is how, here's, like, kind of the timeline of changes. Here's what you can expect. If you want surgery, here are several of the prominent surgeries that many trans people get. And that's how that goes. There's no obscuring going on. It's not like the doctors are sitting there going, ha, yes, we've got another one. Going through the trans production pipeline. Like, they don't benefit from that. They don't get anything out of that. They just want you to be as informed as you can be so that you make the correct decision for yourself. And the controls and information that are given to trans youth are exponentially more than that, because it is a multiple years long process in order to get like basic medications. And that's a whole other can of worms. You got to go jump through a lot of hoops for that on an ongoing basis. So there's no obscuring going on here.
What kind of a decent person would be against gender-affirming care? It sounds great. And the most important factor in reaching young people was the ultimate tool, social media. The information flow to kids wasn't just parents, teachers, and friends anymore. Social media algorithms created powerful echo chambers which amplified transgender messaging to kids. Studies show that about half of transgenders cited YouTube videos as influential in their decisions. For young people questioning their identity, these digital spaces became powerful influence centers.
That's so interesting. So, how exactly did this influence take place? The idea here is that, I mean, at least so far, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is going to take a definitive turn in a different direction. But what this sounds like to me is that young people got on social media and saw that trans people exist and became aware for the first time that different gender identities exist. And as many young people do, they decided that they would experiment with different identities, which anyone should know if you've ever known a teenager or been a teenager. Teenagers do. Some teenagers go through a goth phase, or an emo phase, or a film phase, or a gamer phase, or like they try out different identities, different presentations, different like ideas. They try them out because that they're in the process of building who they want to be. And for some people, you know, they try on like different labels. Maybe they try out being like a, you know, trans girl or like a trans boy, or they try out being non-binary, and then they ultimately are like, no, this isn't for me. But some people try it out and it turns out, well, it is for them. And like, that's okay. The same way it's okay if someone tries out being goth and realizes they really like the goth aesthetic and they just continue to wear goth shit for the rest of their lives. That's okay. You can do that. It's your life.
The social dynamic was especially important among teenage girls. And
I don't know. What's interesting to me here as I look at this, right? I can't help but compare it to my own experience growing up, which is that I didn't see trans people at all, right? There were like 3 places on television in the media that I saw trans people. The Maury Povich show, and Jerry Springer, and maybe like there's probably another one, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. Like maybe Dr. Phil or something. But like, that's where I saw trans people. I didn't know that you could just be a quote unquote normal person and be trans, because my interaction and knowledge base of trans people living in a fundamentalist conservative household was, oh, they're like brought on to be gawked at on like daytime television, and like that was it. Like that was the extent of where you saw trans people. And so this is different, because now we have an entire generation of people who grow up seeing that being a normal ass trans person, being like just a trans person who's gonna go out, live your life, and not be made into like a reality TV media spectacle, like is totally like an option you have. You can just be happy. You can just exist. Yeah, and Jerry Springer paid people to be there, of course. Maury Povich paid people to be there too. But the issue is, like, that was the only idea that people had of what trans could be. Yeah, they were desperate people to exploit.
Their friendship groups. They place high value on social cohesion and fear rejection, making them particularly susceptible to what experts call social contagion effects.
Ah! We got it. We got it, everybody. Social contagion. Your girl called it, right? Now, what's interesting to me about this video is that I'm not seeing a whole lot of citations like presented on screen. It's just experts say. Which experts? Are we talking about Lisa Littman? Which studies? We talking about the rapid onset gender dysphoria from the hilariously discredited Brown study? Like, what are we talking about here? Are we gonna start hearing about rapid onset gender dysphoria? I bet we are, because he talked earlier about how this happened all very quickly. I think he's going to reference the Brown study.
When one member of a friend group identified as trans, often others followed. Some clinics reported entire friend groups showing up for treatment. Then, as the movement gained power,
some friend groups report some clinics reported entire friend groups showing up for treatment. That's not how, like, the assumption that we're being asked to make here is that one trans person then trans the rest of their friends, rather than what is very clearly more the case, which is that a bunch of, like, gay kids found each other and then realized that they weren't just gay, they were all trans. Which is something that happens, right? Like, the shared experience of alienation for being trans does tend to bring different trans people together, right? Like, there is that joke that, like, all trans people know each other, and part of it is, like, because we kind of gravitate towards each other. It's the social ostracization that we experience, like, brings us together. And it's not because, like, there's an infection traveling between the friend group that's transing everybody. It's not the trans amoeba in the drinking water.
institutions fell in line one after another. Schools adopted new policies, often keeping parents in the dark. Medical associations rewrote.
Schools adopted new policies, often keeping parents in the dark. What's, again, incredible that there is no citations in this. The new policies that he's referencing, and I can't know for sure unless he's more specific, but my understanding is that these policies where schools don't report, whether a kid is gay or trans to parents, those predate, like, this upswing in, like, transgender acceptance that has allowed more kids to come out or experiment with their identities, etc. And one of the reasons schools have this policy is because historically, when schools don't have policies against outing trans students, what winds up happening is parents get told, and then the students either get abused or kicked out of their homes. They get disowned, right? Because conservatives, and you'll actually see oftentimes conservatives come into my chat during these segments, especially in the YouTube chat, come in and say, like, "Oh man, if my kid was gay, I wouldn't like, oh man, I wouldn't just kick them out of my house. I'd give them a whooping." Like, it's they talk about, like, beating their kids. In some cases they talk about killing their kids. They, like, a lot of conservatives would rather have a dead child than a living trans child. And they don't make that a secret. They will openly state it. So that's one of the reasons schools started adopting policies to not out students. And many schools have had these policies in place since, like, the 90s.
Their guidelines, making it easier for young people to start treatments and surgery. Corporations rushed to cash in on things, as they always do.
Medical associations rewrote their guidelines, making it easier for young people to start treatments and surgery. Citation needed, because it takes multiple years of going to see experts in given psychological fields in order to pave the way to get medical treatment and especially to get surgery. You need to get like second or third opinions for surgeries if you're a trans youth. Oh, Emerald Dirge over in Riverboat chat. My friend's dad would joke about killing their own kid if they came out. Yeah, I'm not, like, this isn't hyperbole. This was a lived reality for many queer children growing up. And corporations rush to cash in on things, as they always do. Ah, yes. The copious amounts of money to be made by exploiting the impoverished trans folks of America.
Even Donald Trump, running in 2016, when pressed, said transgender people should be able to use whatever bathroom they feel is appropriate, and he had no interest in turning it into a campaign issue. And the movement's demands grew larger. It wasn't enough to accept transgender individuals.
Donald Trump kicked trans people out of the military the first time around, too. Like, what are you talking? Even Donald Trump kowtowed to the trans lobby. I mean, he was, yeah, when he was trying to moderate, and then when he got into office, what did he do to trans people?
Had to fully embrace their ideology or be branded transphobic. The notion that biological sex itself was a social—
Wait, I'm sorry, okay. You had to fully embrace their ideology or be labeled as transphobic. Yeah, because if you're saying you don't have the right to be trans, or like your identity isn't valid, you are being transphobic, right? And like, sure, maybe you don't care if you're being transphobic. Many people on the internet don't. But like, that doesn't make you not a bigot against trans people. Like, if somebody is like, well, I'm not a bigot against trans people, I just think they're mentally ill and need to be given different legal rights than other kinds of people, like that, you're a bigot. Like, you might not like the fact that you're labeled as a bigot. You might not like the consequences of your actions, but that's what you are. You have an irrational hatred or disgust towards trans people.
Ideology or be branded transphobic. The notion that biological sex itself was a social construct became mainstream in many circles.
Biological sex, to an extent, is socially constructed. We are the ones who make the categories of biological sex. We created those categories. There are other types of people, other cultures of people who might, under the same circumstances, based on like their cultural understanding of sex, have created different categories for it. I'm gay telling you this, listen up. If you have the privilege to do all this, you need to reconsider. You need to redirect your tactic. It's obnoxious. Redirect my tactic towards whom? Stop acting like we don't need straight people. When have I ever said that we don't need straight people? Yeah, like, stop, I don't know, stop shadowboxing and engage with what I actually say. like I don't know. Also, I do have to say, if you think this guy stands for all straight people, man, what a low opinion you have of straight people, you know? You want all straight people to be punished? No, I don't. Engage with what I'm actually saying. Engage with what I actually say, and if you are, in fact, in good faith, I want you to actually respond to the things that I say. If the next thing out of you in this chat is something completely unrelated to something is completely unrelated to what we're talking about, you're just going to be banned because you're schizo posting. You're responding to me. No, you're not. Collect your fucking thoughts and respond in a coherent manner.
The phrase trans women are women became an unquestionable mantra.
Excellent. They're collected. Ask me. You're the one coming here. Make a collected point in response to the things I've said. My thoughts are collected. They are pure. You were going to ask me a question. I wasn't. The thing I was saying to you was, make sure your comments are related to something I've said. Because the things you came in here saying, that I want all straight people punished, are not indicative of what I actually believe or anything I have ever said on this channel. The next thing I see from you in chat should be something related to something I actually said. And that should then
Do we
continue
need
throughout
straight
our
people?
exchange.
Can't do hair, can't do fashion, can't create art, can't dance.
That's true. Straight people need to learn how to do hair, fashion, art, and dancing. And then finally, we can have a final Armageddon to settle all this. One with fabulous dance moves. Also, Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs.
This created a growing divide
Also, trans women are women.
between activists and medical professionals. Many doctors and researchers
Can we...
created a growing divide between activists and medical professionals.
Activists and medical professionals. We have a random Twitter account and J.K. Rowling. Excellent medical professionals to cite.
Many doctors and researchers had concerns as transition became less about treating gender dysphoria.
Many doctors and researchers had concerns. But, you know, all the major medical institutions, all the major medical groups, all universally agreed that gender-affirming care was good and necessary and helpful because of a huge amount of data out there that shows that, like, for example, having one gender-affirming parent supporting a trans kid reduces their suicidality by 16 times and brings it back down to the same level of suicidality, the same rate of suicidality as cisgender kids. Well done, Nindreen. And what data is that? Oh, I would love to jump into that. Let me bring that up. Boing. Here's a study from 2023. Association of gender identity acceptance with fewer suicide attempts among transgender and non-binary youth. Using data from a 2018 cross-sectional survey of LGBTQ youth, the current study examined the association of gender identity acceptance from others with suicide attempts among 8,218 transgender non-binary youth. Youth reported gender identity acceptance levels from parents, other relatives, school professionals, healthcare professionals, friends, and classmates to whom they were out. Let's see. Results. Each category of adult and peer gender identity acceptance was associated with lower odds of past year suicide attempt, with the strongest associations within each individual category being acceptance from parents. The transgender non-binary youth who reported gender identity acceptance from at least one adult had 1/3 lower odds of reporting a past year suicide attempt, and acceptance from at least one peer was also associated with lower odds of a past year suicide attempt. Peer acceptance was particularly impactful for transgender youth, and the relationship between adult and peer acceptance remained significant after controlling for the association of each form, suggesting unique relationships for each on transgender non-binary youth suicide attempts. Acceptance was more impactful for transgender non-binary youth assigned male at birth compared with transgender non-binary youth assigned female at birth. Overall, 29% of transgender non-binary youth in the sample reported at least one suicide attempt in the past 12 months. When examined across levels of acceptance, TGNB youth who felt extremely accepted reported on average half the rate of past year suicide attempts across all categories compared with youth who felt not at all accepted. After dichotomization, the proportion of TGNB youth reporting a suicide attempt in the past year was significantly lower among those who reported having gender identity acceptance compared with those who were not accepted for all individual categories of peers and adults. In both bivariate and multivariate models, the strongest association was found to be that acceptance from parents. So, yeah, there you go. Here's a link to the study. And that's just one study. There are multiple studies that confirm this, talk about it, etc. The Trevor Project, in particular, has a study here because the Trevor Project also has researchers. Anti-transgender laws cause up to 72% increase in suicide attempts among transgender and non-binary youth, according to this study from 2024. So what he's talking about here is... yeah, it'd be interesting if he provided any data to back himself up.
And more about affirming any claim of gender identity, but it was becoming harder to resist. Two competing narratives emerged. Activists insisted these transgender youth were always there. They were just finally free to be themselves. Critics pointing to the unprecedented speed of the change and the complete...
Boy howdy, did I fucking call this too? Look at that, Abigail Schreier. The speed of the change. Are we about to also get a rapid onset gender dysphoria? Oh god, I hope so. The Littman study is one of my favorite things to tear into.
Reversal in gender ratios, they saw evidence of a social contagion. But that perfect storm had gathered strong, and
they saw evidence of a social contagion, you know, because they were recycling Nazi rhetoric.
Movement seemed unstoppable. But as history shows time and time again, rapid gains in political power often lead to overreach. And that's exactly what happened next. Hey, real quick, if I make any substantive mistake in this video, let me know and I'll address it in a pinned comment below. Okay, so when a movement gains power...
Well, the problem is, if I made any mistakes, let me know and I'll address it in a pinned comment below. You aren't actually providing any citations for your claims. Let's see that pinned comment. There aren't any pinned comments.
Or quickly, overreach almost always follows. What started as a push for basic rights and dignity morphed into something more extreme, and the pushback...
Okay, sorry. Vertical chat's being silly. Alphabet people depend on normal straight folk to make more alphabet people. Have you never heard of bisexual people? Or pansexual people? Have you never heard of, like, gay people who have sex with other gay people? And are still able to procreate? That's crazy. Like, there are... like, I don't know. We need a better quality of troll.
Was going to be inevitable. Here's where the movement began to erode public support and turn allies into skeptics. The first was their use of censorship. What began as respect turned into forced compliance.
Okay, wait, these are where things are going too far. Okay. So what began as respect turned into forced compliance.
Hey Jack.
Okay.
Loving the hair, red heart emoji.
Thank you.
Happy Pride Month. Keep up the awesome work, smiling face with hearts emoji, and loving your takedown of this bald idiot, smiley face emoji.
Christians Against Dinosaurs, thank you for the €5. Very much appreciated, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. What began as respect turned into forced compliance. Okay, so let's just walk through this, right? So if you respect someone or respect a group of people, does somebody coming to you and saying, "Hey, here's a way you can like be more respectful," does that set you off and come across as forced compliance? Like, if you found out that a group of people you respected were actually being, like, disrespected by the language you were using, would you not simply go, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," and adopt different language that is more inclusive? Because that's the normal reaction when there's actual respect, right? The other component there is forced compliance. What was the mechanism exactly for forced compliance? Was it just your coworkers were uncomfortable working with you when they found out that you were posting, like, God hates T-slurs on your Twitter account every day? Was it like, because this has literally happened. There was a guy who got into my DMs years ago, and in order to tell me that as a trans person, he wanted to burn me alive and rape me. And I found his mom and had a nice talk with her about that. But, like, that's not really forced compliance, is it? Like, if that guy had lost his job as a result of his actions, that's not really forced compliance. That's him suffering the consequences of, like, his coworkers knowing he's a hateful piece of trash, right? Wild stuff going on with that, by the way. His mom told me some things. That was one of the weirdest conversations of my life. All right? That's not really censorship if you get fired from your job because in your off time you're just a hateful piece of shit to others online. Yeah, freedom of speech is not freedom of consequence. Exactly, Dirt.
It was less about acceptance and more about enforcement. Dissent wasn't just discouraged, it was silenced. Criticism of any kind, even mild or well-meaning, it became transphobia, and those who voiced it got slammed.
It became transphobia. Yeah, you know, those people with concerns, they were all just so well-meaning. You know, all just so well-meaning when they described trans people existing as irreversible damage to the psyches and bodies of people. That's just a subtle disagreement. It's not, you know, a long-term project to deny the humanity of trans people. Definitely not. No, sir.
Social media platforms became ground zero. As the transgender movement gained traction, those...
Can we like, okay, I know I'm being a real pause champ in this video, but can we take a moment to really like, social media platforms became ground zero? Ground zero? Like 9/11? Like are we talking about like trans people advocating that we should be extended basic respect is now being like directly compared to like a fucking atomic bomb explosion or one of the biggest acts of terrorism against the United States? Like, man. Yeah, Hiroshima level gender bending. That's going to come up in the new Avatar series, by the way. I'm calling it now.
platforms implemented policies aimed at curbing what they called hate speech or
Yeah. I bet you guys all knew that while jet fuel, I bet none of you guys knew that while jet fuel can't melt steel beams, gender identity can.
Misgendering or dead naming. In practice, this meant...
I know what ground zero means. I was making a joke because, like, the entirety of this video is scary, be scared and worried music over this man making a colossal amount of claims without actually providing any evidence. I'm having a little fun with semantics.
Punishing users for sometimes stating basic biological facts or expressing concerns about the movement's excesses. Women were banned from Twitter for referring to biological males as a he.
Wait a minute, just real quick. What exactly is the what exactly is this? The Family Policy Alliance. Our key issues. Oh, protecting girls' sports, parental rights, protecting Roe. Let's actually zoom out a little bit. Help, not harm. Learn how we are protecting children from dangerous trans surgeries or drugs that have irreversible effects. They're just they're just a bunch of well-meaning, godly folks. All right? Definitely not like a conservative think tank meant to specifically advocate against trans people. You know what? Let's take a look here. Just to go to Google Family Policy Alliance transgender. Here, what do we got? Oh, hey, look, they have an entire section of their website on. Oddly enough, when you do the drop-down menu here, it gives you the option for life, parental rights, help not harm, and save girls' sports, but it doesn't give transgender an option. That's interesting. God created mankind male and female in his image and likeness, which cannot be changed. Oh, like, oh, okay. So they're just religiously against trans people existing. Oh, that's different. Men and women are fundamentally different from each other and yet complementary to each other. People are born genetically with clear male or female chromosomes and a vast majority with clearly identifiable biological characteristics that indicate male or female. Indeed, sexual identity is written into the DNA of every cell in our bodies. As such, our biological sex is intricately interwoven with how we live in society and relate to others. As men and women made in the image of God, transgender identifying individuals deserve our respect, compassion, and care as neighbors, oddly in quotations there, whom we should love as ourselves. As an outflowing of this care for our neighbors, Family Policy Alliance supports public policy that affirms the unique and complementary roles both men and women play in society and for the family. We oppose efforts that would bring further harm, physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, to those struggling with their identity in this way, and attempts to normalize this behavior in society, especially amongst impressionable children. Again, when a group like this says they are against normalizing transgender people in society, what they mean is they want to remove trans people's ability to exist publicly, right? That's what they're doing. right? All of this is very carefully corporatized conservo speak in order to basically try and make the argument that man and woman are biological terms rather than gender terms. And biology and gender, two very different things. Two very, very different things. And that's pretty interesting, right? Like, sexual identity is written into the DNA of every cell in our bodies. That can be true, but also the chromosomes and sexual identity that might be written into any given part of your body at any given time might be different than what you think it is, right? Like, there are, for example, people with chimerism, right? This is fascinating. There are people who have different parts of their body that have chromosomes that are female or male. Isn't that fascinating? Like, some people might have like a leg or a set of organs that has like female chromosomal markers, while other, and maybe the majority of their body has male chromosomal markers, because biology isn't as straightforward as, well, male and female, duh. Like, that's not how that works, actually, in reality. Reality is much more complicated. And that's just like one example of how that can be different. And it is one of the things that, like, a lot of this is an effort to simplify everything down to the point of like non-existence, right? Where, like, basically the argument being made just in this page alone is that, well, if somebody has that chimerism, whichever makes up more than 50% of their body, that's what their real sex identity is. And, like, your biological sex and your gender identity have nothing to do with one another. Yeah, I mean, like, it's literally setting up a situation where someone could have a male chromosomal brain and a female chromosomal heart. But either way, it doesn't matter, because that's irrelevant to what your identity is. But it's fascinating stuff. The science is really cool. There are a few types of chimerism. Not all result in intersex, but think reverse twins. That's a common one and happens far more often than people think. Yeah, exactly. The thing is, you can only make these arguments because people live in ignorance of the diversity of their biological experience, right? This simplification is something that actually robs people of being able to see the nuance in the world. It's way more interesting when you recognize gender is a social construct. And that's very clear when you look at, like, how gender has functioned in different societies throughout history, right? The common one I defer to here is that India has a recognized third gender in their society, the Hijra. And they have a history in India going back, and not just India, but Pakistan and Tibet, going back thousands of years. You can find it in, like, the Kama Sutra. You can find Hijra mentioned in the Kama Sutra. They have held prestigious roles in Indian society. And, like, they are the most populous country on earth, India. And so when we actually look at this, gender is a complicated thing, and it changes from society to society. And when you look at something like this, where it's like, well, it's just men and women, that is counter to the majority of the human experience on this planet. But I'm sure whoever's behind this account, censorship alert, Twitter banned Focus Citizen from their platform. The crime, a tweet which identified Assistant Health Secretary pick Rachel Levine as a biological male. If stating the facts gets you banned, none of us belong here. At Twitter, we're wondering, hashtag are we next? RT to speak out. I don't know. If the worst thing that happened to you to censor your ideas is that you got banned off of Twitter, I think you'll live. I think you'll be okay. And I think your bigotry will continue to be spread.
Academics who questioned gender identity lost positions. Even comedians found their jokes subject to the language police. Take Megan Murphy, A Canadian
Even comedians found their jokes subject to the language police. Yeah, when has a comedian ever gotten in hot water for, being rude and bigoted? That's never happened before. It's unique to the trans people. Those mean transes. Man, don't look up the history of comedy in America.
feminist banned from Twitter for tweeting, "Men aren't women." Her account was permanently suspended, at least until Elon came along, in a legal battle that set precedent for silencing even factual, biologically grounded statements. Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, who criticized gender ideology while affirming trans rights, became the target of widespread boycotts.
While affirming trans rights, except, like basic rights like being able to use the bathroom. She didn't affirm those rights.
Death threats.
Yeah, which, by the way, you can look at what the new laws in the UK revolving around how trans people get to use the bathroom, and effectively it's trans people can't. If you're trans, you can't. Get fucked.
You'll never be a real man, Jack.
No! How could you be so confining, Sake? No! But thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. And I guess you're right. I will never be a man.
And being labeled a bigot. These weren't just fringe cases. They reflect.
She literally put together like a podcast series about how trans people were invalid. She has written extensively. She's put like hundreds of millions of dollars into campaigning against trans people having basic rights, like being able to piss and shit in public washrooms.
The movement's broader intolerance for dissent. And censorship went beyond individuals. Social media algorithms began suppressing certain content, making sure that alternative viewpoints wouldn't reach a broader audience.
Whoa.
Platforms like YouTube demonetize creators who discuss transitioners or raise concerns about medical intervention on minors. Reddit banned entire communities. Academia and medicine weren't immune.
Real quick. CR Rent, thank you for the $20 super chat.
I was gonna say, when we ask them to be respectful like normal fucking human beings, they scream about the First Amendment as if government and social expectations are the same thing.
Not a peep when her inability to write came out. Nothing after book 4, or even the garbage stage play,
Yeah, also, it feels like it'd be worth noting at this particular moment in time in this video Elephants in the Room is making that J.K. Rowling literally wrote a book with like a trans serial killer as like the antagonist. Like it seems somewhat relevant, I would imagine. Feed algorithms are widely suspected to influence political attitudes. However, previous evidence from switching off the algorithm on meta platforms found no political effects. Here we present results from a 2023 field experiment on Elon Musk's platform X. Shedding light on this puzzle, we assigned active US-based users randomly to either an algorithmic or chronological feed for 7 weeks, measuring political attitudes and online behavior. Switching from a chronological to an algorithmic feed increased engagement and shifted political opinion towards more conservative positions, particularly regarding policy priorities, perceptions of criminal investigations into Donald Trump, and views on the war in Ukraine. In contrast, switching from the algorithmic to the chronological feed had no comparable effects. Neither switching the algorithm nor switching it off significantly affected effective polarization of self-reported partisanship.
Happy Pride Month, Jack and all.
CR Rent, thank you so much for being a member, and happy Pride Month to you as well. Yeah, so this study in Nature from earlier this year actually shows, right, that using the algorithm provided by X does in fact push more conservative media content and radicalizes users' politics towards conservative ideas.
Off topic, but going to bed, so no good time to ask. How discreet is the shipping for the lingerie? My package room is very much an open space.
It's just it is a pink package, but otherwise it says, where it shipped from, and it will say like your name or whatever name you want it shipped to. But apart from that, it's a pink like plastic shipping thing. It's cute. But I wouldn't say it draws a ton of attention. All right.
Either. Researchers who cautioned against fast-tracking transitions for minors faced career-ending repercussions. Dr. Lisa Lippman, who published a...
My package room is mostly open space feels like the tagline for non-tucking.
Hey! True. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. And also, can I just say, I fucking called it. We got Lisa Lippman. We got rapid onset gender dysphoria. Let's go. Fucking called it.
Study on rapid onset gender dysphoria,
Hell
a phenomenon
yeah.
suggesting social contagion among teens, was vilified in a work discredited by activists despite being grounded in some solid empirical research.
Despite being grounded in some solid empirical research, huh? You know what? Let's take a look at this solid empirical research. I am loving this. Let's go take a look. Lisa Lippman, Brown University, rapid onset gender dysphoria. Let's take a quick look at this, because this is maybe one of my all-time favorite studies for transphobes to cite. So here is the study. It was published in 2018. Parent reports of adolescents and young adults perceived to show signs of a rapid onset of gender dysphoria. Now, let's take a quick look, because this is also not the original title of the study, but we'll get to that. Right? So, all right, purpose. In online forums, parents have reported that their children seem to experience a sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria. So what was actually corrected in this? Just to start off. After the publication of this article, questions were raised that prompted the journal to conduct a post-publication reassessment of the article involving senior members of the journal's editorial team, 2 academic editors, a statistics reviewer, and an external expert reviewer. The post-publication review identified issues that needed to be addressed to ensure the article meets PLOS 1's publication criteria. Given the nature of the issues in this case, the PLOS 1 editors decided to republish the article, replacing the original version of record with a revised version in which the author has updated the title, abstract, introduction, discussion, and conclusion sections to address the concerns raised in the editorial reassessment. The materials and methods section was updated to include new information and more detailed descriptions about recruitment sites, and to remove 2 figures due to copyright restrictions. So what exactly is this, right? Emphasis that this is a study of parent observations which serves to develop hypotheses. Because I'm going to go over this. What Lisa Lippman originally alleged was that teenagers were suddenly transitioning. There was a rapid onset of gender dysphoria that then resulted in very sudden transitions that came out of nowhere, right? And that this was a concerning trend that needed to be looked into. What was obfuscated in her original study and merited several different rounds of corrections was essentially that this was not a study of self-reports from the trans kids themselves. This was, in fact, a study based on the parents' perceptions of their children. Because it wasn't based on what the kids were actually undergoing. It was based on what the parents saw happening. And you might think to yourselves, well, it is still weird that the parents only became aware that their kids were experiencing gender dysphoria in a very relatively quick time frame. Well, that's because Lisa Lippman also recruited the parent responders from anti-trans websites. Very specifically, websites that are notorious for hating trans kids and trans people. So you recruit, it's not just now a study on the parent perceptions, it's a study on bigoted parent perceptions of their own kids. And then it suddenly makes sense that, yeah, their kids wouldn't be telling them and communicating to them about the fact that they have these trans ideas and trans thoughts because their parents are bigots. And the kids are well aware that their parents are bigots. So they're not openly communicating how they're feeling with the parents that are going to be bigoted towards them. It's not difficult to figure out. So suddenly, the idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria in this particular case is wildly insane because it's very easily explained away by the mere fact that you recruited people who are objectively biased against trans people to report on their perception of the timeline of their children's transition. It's very bizarre. Is this the study from Only Transphobe Parents? You nailed it, Fodzig. Like, look at how many I wanna really hammer home here. Look at how many corrections. Emphasis that this is all the things that needed to be added for it to be republished. Emphasis that this is a study of parental observations which serves to develop hypotheses. Questions on whether the article describes adolescent onset gender dysphoria or if it describes something new. Expanded discussion of qualitative analyses. Clarification of study design methods and related limitations. Updated information about recruitment. Concerns were raised that this study only posted links to the recruitment information on selected sites that were viewed as being unsupportive of transition. However, announcements about the study included requests to distribute the recruitment information and link, and because information about where the participants encountered the announcement was not collected, it is not known which populations were ultimately reached, which is one of the most charitable things I could ever imagine saying. Well, sure, you posted your calls for respondents on only bigoted websites, but you didn't track who actually responded and where they heard about it from. So maybe it was from other websites. We don't know. Like, that's crazy. Absolutely nuts. Parental approaches to gender dysphoria and views on medical interventions. To oversimplify parental approaches as simply accepting or rejecting misrepresents the range of responses and complexity of approaches that parents take when addressing the needs of their gender dysphoric children. Parental approaches are complex and cover many variables. For example, one parental approach might be to affirm the child as a person, support gender nonconformity, support gender exploration, support mental health evaluation and treatment as needed, support the exploration of additional underlying causes for the gender dysphoria while expressing caution about medical interventions. Another approach might be to affirm the child's newly declared gender identity, support gender nonconformity, support a liberal approach to medical intervention while expressing caution about mental health evaluation and caution about the exploration of potential underlying causes of the dysphoria. To categorize the former as rejecting and the latter as accepting would be inaccurate. The study recruited participants based on whether participants thought their child exhibited a sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria beginning during or after puberty and did not recruit based on parental beliefs about what types of approaches towards gender dysphoric ayas are best. Which, again, holy shit, the charitability. Yeah, look, we can't say for sure whether or not the respondents to this survey were, racist or not racist, because racism has a broad range of ways it could manifest. And given the fact that you did post your recruitment on Stormfront forums, we can't be sure that everyone who responded was racist. But we'll let you republish anyway. It's genuinely insane. Like, Brown University had to put out a statement on this study in particular. 7 months after the academic journal PLOS One indicated plans to seek further expert assessment on a study focused on rapid onset gender dysphoria, the journal has republished the research with a series of corrections and updates by the study's author to address concerns raised in the journal's reassessment. Previous statements. Brown University published a news story detailing a research article in the journal PLOS One. On the morning of August 27th, PLOS One issued a comment on the study, and Brown responded by removing the news story from the news distribution the same day. The university issued the statement below regarding the decision to remove the article due to inaccurate reporting about the nature of events. Brown, on September 5th, issued an expanded statement regarding its decision. Yeah. As a general practice, university news offices often make determinations about publishing faculty research based on its publication in established peer-reviewed journals, considered to be in good standing. The journal PLOS1 on the morning of August 27th published its comment on the research study by Lisa Littman, who holds the position of assistant professor to the practice of behavioral and social sciences at Brown, indicating that the journal will seek further expert assessment on the study's methodology and analyses. Below is the comment posted on the study in the journal PLOS1. PLOS1 is aware of the reader concerns raised by the study's content and methodology. We take all concerns raised about publications in the journal very seriously. We're following up as per our policy and COPE guidelines, literally COPE guidelines. It's crazy. Expanded statement. After the research paper was published in the journal PLOS1, concerns were raised about the paper's research design and methodology by leading academics in the field. These concerns were serious enough that PLOS1 announced that it would conduct a post-publication re-review of the article to seek further expert assessment of the study's methodology and analyses. Given the concerns about research and design methods, not the controversial nature of the subject, the university decided to stop featuring the news story on its news site. However, the research article is still available on the journal's website and the author's researchers at Brown page. The university does not know how long the re-review of the paper will take, or what, if any, actions the journal will take. This is not about academic freedom. This is about academic standards. Academic freedom and inclusion are not mutually exclusive. At the same time, we've confirmed our long-standing support for members of the trans community. Brown is proud to be among the first universities to include medical care for gender reassignment in its student health plan, and that our medical school is a leader in education on care for transgender individuals. Academic freedom and support for the trans community or any other group are not mutually exclusive. These values can and indeed must coexist. So just as an FYI, the research that he is trying to say undergirds the existence of rapid onset gender dysphoria is not about actual people experiencing rapid onset gender dysphoria. It's about parents seeing their children suddenly develop a desire that is vocalized to transition. But interestingly enough, he's not going into that.
Mass media played its role too. By presenting one-sided narratives, outlets often framed any opposition as bigotry. Critics weren't debating, they were portrayed as enemies of progress. The result was an environment where one side of the debate could dominate unchecked, and they dominated. And it also made genuine concerns taboo to say. And the two biggest concerns people had were related to,
hey, Riverboat Jack, what happened to that user with the bad faith argument of taking what you said the other way? They weren't responding to anything I was actually saying, and instead just devolved into, being transphobic. So, they got banned.
Kids and women's spaces. The movement's focus on children became its most contentious battleground early on. For many, this wasn't just about respect or inclusion. It felt like an attack on childhood innocence.
I'm sorry, it felt like an attack on childhood innocence? What is the attack on childhood innocence here?
Not just about respect or inclusion.
Like a drag class for your kids. Okay. What do you think they're going to teach kids how to do? Oh no, children are going to learn how to dress up in funny, silly outfits? The horror. Why, you're practically sending them to a drama camp. What next? Are they going to put on a production of King Lear? Are they going to do a Romeo and Juliet?
It felt like an attack on childhood innocence. From explicit materials in schools to controversial medical treatments, activists pushed boundaries that left even moderate supporters questioning their methods.
Like?
One flashpoint was graphic, sexualized material in children's libraries. When parents...
Oh no! Graphic sexual material in children's libraries? You mean like the Bible? You mean like Catcher in the Rye? You do know that Shakespeare is full of fucking dick jokes, right? The Bible literally has the Songs of Solomon. For fuck's sake, the guy who flees Sodom and Gomorrah gets raped by his own daughters. But that's okay? I don't know. This is weird. Oh, but a graphic novel geared towards children who've had sex ed classes, that's the problem. That's the real problem.
Rejected, They were labeled as bigots or censors themselves, but most people agree with the concept of age-appropriate material for kids. Then came Drag Queen Story Hour that exploded across the country.
Well, also the idea being that, like, see, this is what I mean, right? The idea here is like, oh, look at this poor innocent girl. This poor innocent girl will be in a school with a library that has genderqueer in it. The book Genderqueer. You all know Genderqueer, right? It will rob her of her innocence. And it's like, one, that girl's not going to read Genderqueer. Two, that book is written for teenagers. And teenagers should already know what sex is, just as a matter of keeping themselves safe.
And drag events billed as inclusive, family-friendly entertainment. But on social media, videos came out showing men in drag gyrating on kids, or family shows where people were singing about eating dicks. Accounts like Libs of TikTok posted over-the-top material every day. And schools didn't just...
Yeah, you know, you're right. This sexualization has gone too far. I'm convinced. You know, I've always thought there is something about adults making media for children that's been a bit sussy. You know? I think we need just a total and complete shutdown of any media made for children until we figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, I can't help but remember that scene from Osmosis Jones. You all know the one. The one with the song written by Kid Rock? Osmosis Jones, by the way, movie from the 90s? Early 2000s? I think early 2000s. That has the lyrics. Let me just see here. Yes. Now some people say my mind's blown. I'm coolin' like a snow cone. On my cell phone, I'm paid. Gee, can't call me. Just page me. Young ladies, I like 'em underage, see? Some say that's statutory, but I say it's mandatory. Thanks, Kid Rock, best friend of Donald Trump, the current president of the United States. But weirdly enough, a lot of people don't seem to have an issue with Kid Rock performing in front of children. That seems weird. But when you find examples of drag shows that parents brought their kids to, suddenly that's all a huge problem. What about the parents who brought their kids to go see Osmosis Jones? What about those parents? Yeah, that's right. That's right. But let's continue.
Host events, but integrated activism deep in their curriculum. Some districts kept parents in the dark about their kids.
Yeah, also, how dare kids support LGBTQ people? It's not like kids wind up growing up to be LGBTQ. God, what's next? Are schools gonna start teaching about the civil rights movement and be advocating for the basic human dignity of other people in society? Disgusting. They should be learning how to run a business and pay taxes.
Gender identity at school, and teachers were trained to affirm any child questioning their gender without telling their parents.
Yeah, because if you tell their parents, sometimes they get beat, killed, or disowned.
Amber Levine of Newcastle is suing the school. Last December, Levine said she found a chest binder used to flatten someone's breasts in her 13-year-old child's room. Levine says the school either provided it or helped obtain it.
And maybe these people were just having a good time with their chance, but it wasn't funny to a lot of other people.
Also, it's not hard to get a chest binder. You can just go buy one at a store. Here, how about we get an update on that story? How about we do that real quick?
The United the state Supreme Court has denied the appeal of a mother from Maine.
Yeah, she was suing a school for not telling her about her child's attempted gender transition. Amber Levine claimed a school counselor at Great Salt Bay Community School in Damariscotta secretly encouraged her child to begin a gender transition. The school also allegedly gave that child a chest binder and allowed the child to use a different name and different pronouns and didn't tell Levine.
What?
Fucking pronouns!
You mean schools have to report nicknames? So when like a kid starts getting like called by his friends like I don't know, Beefums, and that's just his name in the friend group, that needs to be reported to parents? Come on.
So she sued, saying her 14th Amendment rights had been violated, but a federal judge dismissed that case back in 2024. An appeals court also dismissed the suit last July. The panel of judges said that Levine had not provided enough evidence of the district having a custom or a policy of withholding information.
I just paid $3.
Yeah, so this case was dismissed by 3 different courts, including the Supreme Court. I mean, I guess technically not dismissed by the Supreme Court. They refused to hear it because it had been dismissed twice. Like, I don't know. She spent multiple years of her life trying to sue her kid's school district for, like, helping her kid. That's crazy.
The medical side was even more polarizing. Between 2007...
Wait a minute. I remember this. Wait, 1 second. Also, it's interesting to me that, like, all of these are sourced to, like, 2023. New York City kicked off last weekend of Pride Month with its annual drag march on Friday. Hundreds of drag performers marched through Manhattan's East Village in elaborate costumes on their way to the iconic Stonewall Inn, chanting, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." Oh, shared on Twitter by Timcast News. That's right. Others can be heard saying in the clip, "We're here, we're queer, we're not going shopping." Yeah, okay. Yeah. However, others said the chant was mocking conservatives. They are mocking the fucking weirdos who think they are coming for their children. Evil predators who are coming for your children. Don't chant about it in public, one Twitter user wrote. The reality here is, yes, it's a chant designed to mock people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who think that, like, gay people are coming to, like, indoctrinate kids. Jack, I'm sorry I can't get over Beefums. Look, Beefums grew up to be a great investment banker, okay? He's still friends with some of the old gang.
17 and 21, nearly 18,000 minors in the U.S. started puberty blockers or hormone treatments, and the numbers were rising each year. These drugs, often creating irreversible changes, carried...
No, they don't create irreversible changes. Like, I can't believe I have to keep saying this. Most puberty blockers are given to cisgender children. And we have decades upon decades of research on cisgender children about the effects of puberty blockers. And what we know is that puberty blockers delay puberty, and once you stop taking the puberty blockers, you go through puberty. These are not permanent changes. You are not just permanently pre-pubertal. You just take the puberty blockers until you either stop taking them and go through your normal puberty, or you start taking HRT and transition. Like, that's how that works. And the puberty blockers are literally there to buy more time for children to make more informed choices about who they want to be. Beefums is irreversible change. I regret my words.
Significant risks. Yet they were given to children as young as 10. And
yeah, we have a shit ton of research on what those drugs do to children 10 and under, because they're primarily given to children 10 and under in order to stop early onset puberty.
By 2021, over 5,700 minors underwent surgeries like double mastectomies to align with their gender identities.
Hey, guess what? What's crazy to me right? Anytime this gets brought up, anytime like, oh man, surgery on kids, the overwhelming majority of mastectomies on children are done by cis boys who are dealing with gynomastia, which is breast growth on cisgender boys. That's who gets the overwhelming majority. And when we take a look at the other majority, it's cisgender girls who are getting breast reductions. Notice how it just switched to minors and not a specific age as well? Yeah, because that includes like 15 and 16-year-olds. I had a 15-year-old classmate, 15-year-old girl in my school, in my high school, right? Who got breast reduction surgery as a teenager because her breasts were too large and were causing her body discomfort. This happens all the time, and no conservatives give a single fuck about it. It's only when it becomes a cudgel used against trans kids that they give a fuck about it. Suddenly, when it's the same treatment that cis children overwhelmingly get, that a trans kid might get, suddenly, it's a huge existential problem.
Proponents argued these interventions save lives by preventing suicides, but the evidence
they do. They also do that.
On that was pretty shaky. Many critics pointed out that mental health conditions like anxiety and depressions often went untreated in favor of rushing into gender transitions. And
no, they don't often go untreated, because when you are a trans kid, getting your actual medical treatment requires you to talk to multiple medical professionals and psychological professionals. You're literally talking to multiple experts in child psychology in order to access this care.
These excesses didn't alienate just conservatives, but many of the movement's original supporters. And if targeting kids was one misstep, the transgender movement's collision with women's rights was the other. Despite what some activists claim, it's abundantly...
Oh God, Leah Thomas. I should have called this. I should have called that Leah Thomas was going to come up at some point in here.
I had 2 friends in high school who underwent breast reduction. Unfortunately, one had the last name Tittleman.
Oh no. That's unfortunate. And I'm sure they got a lot of shit for that in high school, because high schoolers can be mean. But thank you for the 5 tier 1 sub, Sake Tanuki. Also, God, I can't believe I also have to talk about Leah Thomas again. Good thing I did a bunch of deep dives into this years ago.
Clear that in any activity that requires strength and speed, men just have a massive advantage over women. I'm not even going to go through those statistics. Leah.
Oh, how convenient for you. Now, what's interesting to let's let him talk about Leah Thomas, then I'll jump into this.
Thomas was one early example. He was a mediocre male swimmer who, after transitioning,
I'm sorry, was that a misgender, I heard?
An early example. He was a mediocre...
Ah, yes, it is a misgender. I see it's not exactly about respect anymore, is it? It's so interesting. I guess the transgender movement went too far, and now Ken LaCorte just doesn't feel the need to respect trans people. That of course.
Male swimmer who, after transitioning, dominated women's competitions. Thomas went from ranking 462nd as a male to breaking women's records and winning NCAA championships.
Now, this is pretty interesting because the only way you could possibly frame Leah Thomas's, sports achievements in this way is if you are incredibly intellectually dishonest. Now, why am I saying that? An excellent source, the Leah Thomas Wikipedia page. Let's take a quick look here. Swimming career. That might be an excellent place to start. Thomas began swimming on the men's team at the University of Pennsylvania in 2017. During her freshman year, Thomas recorded a time of 8 minutes and 57.55 seconds in the 1,000-yard freestyle.
Dominating for tying 5th. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll get there, Sake. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. That ranked as the 6th fastest national men's time. and also recorded 500-yard freestyle and 1,650-yard freestyle times that ranked within the national top 100. On the men's swim team in 2018 to 2019, Thomas finished in the men's 500, 1,000, and 1,650-yard freestyle at the Ivy League Championships as a sophomore, or finished second, rather, in the men's 500, 1,000, and 1,650-yard freestyle in 2019. In the 2018 to 2019 season, Thomas recorded the top UPenn men's team times in the 500 free, the 1,000 free, and the 1,650 free, but was the sixth best among UPenn's men's team members in the 200 free. So just to be very clear here, Leah Thomas in the 2018 to 2019 season was literally one of the top swimmers for her college and one of the top Ivy League swimmers in the country. Okay? But oddly enough, something really odd happened after the 2018 to 2019 season. What might that be? Oh, Thomas began transitioning using hormone therapy in May of 2019 and came out as a trans woman during her junior year to her coach's friends in the women's and men's swim teams at the University of Pennsylvania. She was required to swim for the men's team in the 2019 to 2020 academic year as a junior while undergoing hormone therapy, and then swam on the women's team in the 2021 to 2022 year after taking a year off to maintain her eligibility.
Happy Pride, Jack and Friends, heart emoji, orange heart emoji,
Why,
yellow
Nano,
heart
thank
emoji,
you for the $5
green
super
heart
chat.
emoji, blue heart emoji, purple heart emoji.
So what exactly happened here? Well, all of the data that conservatives cite about how Leah Thomas was the 462nd ranking swimmer when she competed in the men's division, that's from when she was on HRT. That's from when her muscle mass started significantly declining, because that's what happens when trans women go on HRT. And then she took a year off. So by the time she was competing in the women's division, she had 2 years on HRT. Like it's just very obvious that the reason she was a good swimmer after she transitioned is because she was a good swimmer before she transitioned. But the reduction in muscle mass, the reduction in muscle power, led to her being comparable and competitive in the women's division. That's the story there. It's not that she went from being the one of the worst swimmers at UPenn to one of the best in the women's division. That's not what happened.
UPenn is a top 50 program nationally in swimming. They don't have any mediocre swimmers. Thomas was a good swimmer before transition too, just in different events.
Yeah, exactly. She's always been a good swimmer. So this is just a blatantly dishonest way to portray this if you bothered to do any kind of background research on your points at all.
Here at the end of this race, Thomas starting to pull away.
Female athletes who trained their entire lives suddenly found themselves losing races, scholarships, and opportunities. A recent UN study showed that more than 600 biological female athletes lost over 890 medals to transgendered opponents in 29 different sports. Other
transgendered opponents. It's just transgender opponents. I don't know. The terminology being wrong is very weird.
Suffered injuries competing against biologically stronger opponents. These weren't
yeah, because women never get injured doing sports against other women. That's never happened before. When women do MMA against each other, they never get hurt.
With the bells being rung for final lap at swimming, I now want to see a Mall Santa swimming race in full costume.
I mean, I've never wanted to see that before. I've never been able to articulate that thought in my head before, but I think that'd be a great spectacle event.
Theoretical concerns. They were happening on track.
Also, let's get a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer at the track. Let's do it.
And in pools and on playing fields across the world. The problems went beyond competitions. A Vermont high school banned its entire girls' volleyball team from their locker rooms. Their crime? It was objecting to a biological man changing with them. Women's prisons became another flashpoint. Male inmates began declaring themselves transgender, then being sent to female facilities. Some people called that a government-sanctioned rape. In California...
What is fascinating about that to me is that we have the data when it comes to the safety of transgender women in men's prisons. Yeah, results from the Vera Institute of Justice and Black and Pink National's survey of currently incarcerated transgender people reveal their policy recommendations around housing, healthcare, safety, dignity behind bars across diverse experiences in state prisons. Let's take a look. Nearly 90% of respondents had spent time in solitary confinement, and 1 in 5 sent in a survey from solitary confinement, which many reported to be the only option for separation from people who threaten harm. More than half, 53% of respondents, reported experiencing a non-consensual sexual encounter during their current sentence. 31% named harassment, threats, and attacks by other incarcerated people as the top reason they felt unsafe behind bars. Of respondents who sought medication to support gender transition in prison, 53% were unable to access it due to obstacles such as blanket bans, diagnosis requirements, or discrimination by medical or prison staff. So, again, there is a disproportionate threat of sexual violence towards trans people in prison. Also, you know what? Don't even take my word for it. Let's take a look at what the U.S. government says. Here, this was submitted to into the record. Survey: transgender inmates more likely to be victims of sexual assault. In a first-of-its-kind survey of the federal and state inmate population in America, data shows that transgender individuals are 9 times more likely than other inmates to encounter sexual harassment or assault within 12 months of admission. The National Inmate Survey administered by the Bureau of Justice Statistics found 35% of transgender inmates held in prisons and 34% held in jails experienced 1 or more incidents of sexual assault at the hands of facility staff or other inmates within a 1-year period.
A third of the biological men seeking to be housed with women had been convicted of a sex crime. In Wisconsin, it was over half. To many, the pattern became clear. Women's rights, hard-won over decades, were being sacrificed.
Also, just to be clear, women in women's prisons, some of them have also done sex crimes. Like, even assuming this is true, women in women's prisons did sex crimes sometimes. God damn.
Sacrificed on the altar of gender ideology. Spaces once reserved for biological females, from locker rooms to prison cells, no longer offered protection. All of these overreaches helped combine to fuel a backlash that they'd never seen. It started in Europe, where countries like Sweden, Finland, and the UK changed their policy on medical transitioning. These nations had been early adopter of gender-affirming care, but reversed course after data revealed it was a serious risk to minors. The detransition movement gained steam too.
It's so crazy for him to keep saying the data shows and then not provide any citations whatsoever. That's crazy. You wrote this. You could just like include the citations you used when you wrote the script for this. I'm reacting on the fly.
Tina Peters, like many women in prison, did sex crimes.
That is technically correct. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs and the constant zingers. I appreciate them.
More young people, especially girls, started speaking out about rushing into transitions they later regretted.
I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief in this cause.
Man, it's so weird that this is supposedly a really widespread phenomenon of detransitioning, but they can only find like the same 3 detransitioners to talk about how they were forcibly transitioned by the trans movement. That's really weird and strange.
Caused me lifelong, irreversible harm.
Among those starting hormone treatments, only 64% of biological females continued. And that suggested that many young women might be misidentifying normal teen struggles as gender dysphoria. Public opinion shifted hard as well. By 2024, 55% of Americans believe support for transgender rights had gone too far, including a quarter of Democratic voters. In sports, the numbers were even more dramatic. 69% believe transgender athletes should compete only on teams matching their birth gender. And
what's really interesting about this, by the way, is that there's a complete abdication of any of the origins of this debate, right? As if like the American public is just responding to new information in a rational way, which is not what's happening. The entire debate, for example, over trans athletes is entirely fabricated as a wedge issue by Chris Rufo, who's been for years one of the people in the conservative movement that has found these wedge issues to try and drum up culture wars, right? He's the guy who did critical race theory and mainstreamed and popularized that idea in conservative circles. He's the guy who did trans girls in sports. And he is currently trying to workshop new stuff for the conservative movement. Like, all of this is a conservative project funded by billionaires. You know, like that's what's happening here. It's just a distraction to like keep conservatives from remembering that billionaires are just wantonly stealing their hard-earned dollary dues.
For the first time ever, it made a difference in political campaigns. In the 2022 election, Republicans had tried to make it an issue, but it fell flat. In 2024, that changed big time. Internal polling showed the transgender issue resonating negatively with voters in key swing states, particularly among Hispanic, Black, and working class voters, and Republicans bet big on it. During Donald Trump's debate with Kamala Harris, he mentioned that she supported transgender surgeries for inmates. It sounded like something he made.
Okay, but also, there's no evidence that trans issues were what moved the election, right? Like, as far as the data coming out of the elections, within the top 10 issues, trans people weren't one of them. Like when you ask conservative voters, you know, do you like to rank what they care about? They don't rank trans issues up there. They don't really give a fuck unless they're reminded that we exist, right? And so when we're actually looking at, you know, did trans issues swing the 2024 election? No. Obviously, conservatives want that impression to be the case, so they keep making videos like this. Because anything other than talking about the actual problems that are affecting society, am I right? Like, the issue here is like, you know, you'll get people who say like what Larry Snuts says in chat, just stay away from the kids and the women's sports and y'all are okay with us. But like, what is that? Like, stay away from the kids. Can trans people not go to malls because kids might be there and might see a trans person? What does that mean? Does it mean like we don't want trans people talking to our kids? What if your kid has like a trans uncle? Well, we don't want them trying to like sexually indoctrinate children. That's great. We don't want that either. We don't want anybody to be sexualizing children. But the idea that you think trans people are trying to do that is a huge problem that doesn't comport with reality. Kids means existing at all. I mean, that's the correct thing, right? Like, that's what they mean. Also, there are trans kids. That is true. You know, trans adults were once trans kids.
Made up, as he kind of does sometimes, but it turned out he had the receipts, and his campaign put out 2 commercials similar to this one.
Kamala was the first to help pay for a prisoner's sex change.
The power that I had, I used it in a way that was about pushing for the movement, frankly, and the agenda.
Kamala's agenda is they, them, not you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Research showed those commercials moved voters more than any other in the election, and it was one of the most persuasive ads in years.
Everyone should understand that for the GOP, this is about thought control. If they can eliminate trans existence from media, they can do to other things.
I mean, that's true, right? Like that is true. I will also say right? That there is, like, he is correct about that particular ad in that particular context. But the reason it moved a lot of people was because they weren't thinking about trans issues unless there was an ad reminding them about trans issues. Because for the vast majority of people, when they are making a political decision like who to vote for, they aren't thinking to themselves, that one likes trans people and that one doesn't. What they're thinking about is, who's going to be able to make sure that my kid has their medical bills paid? Which candidate is going to make it easier for me to make sure my kid can go to the hospital? Which candidate is going to make it easier for me to stay in my house? Which candidate is going to make it easier for me to get a job? Then why the drag queen story hour in schools? Because people come into schools to read books to children all the time. People like grandmas will dress up as like princesses or queens to like go in and read stories to children. There's a long and storied tradition, pardon the pun, of people dressing up in silly outfits to read the kids, because kids like silly outfits. Like it's not a complicated idea. Yeah, it's just dressing up in an outfit. I don't know. Like, I'm sure you've seen like a dad who has like a daughter, and like the daughter wants to play castle, and like is like, daddy, like you're a princess now, teehee, and like poorly does like the dad's makeup and like has them put on like a dress or something. Like, that happens just in the course of children playing because they like seeing adults dressed up silly. That's it. That's blatantly untrue. Those ads had little to no impact. The real problem. Well, Drew Pruitt, I agree with you that the reason, but I will tweak that a little bit. The reason those ads were able to be effective was specifically because Kamala Harris did not talk about trans issues at all during her campaign. At all. She didn't say the word transgender once during the 2024 election. Not once. And by avoiding that issue, by not engaging with it, what wound up happening was she left ideological real estate available for Republicans to take advantage of. Instead of being a bold fighter, she allowed herself to be bulldozed. And then they could literally say whatever they wanted. It didn't matter if it was true. And their voters would believe it because they weren't hearing anything else.
$200 million on anti-transgender advertising in 2024, the most ever spent on a social issues ads in a presidential race. Post-election, Democratic politicians began openly criticizing the party's alignment with far-left positions on transgender issues for the first time ever. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton summed it up this way: I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete.
Yeah, and Seth Moulton is now facing the music on that one.
But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. They weren't afraid anymore, and neither are corporations, and that backlash has started there. Companies that had previously embraced anything gender ideology scaled back their...
Man, can we just like take a moment here?
There. Companies that had
previously embraced gender ideology. Bud Light gave her one sponsorship for one video on Instagram that you never would have seen unless like it was boosted to all of you, and like you guys shit your pants over it. That's not embracing ideology. This was an attempt to market to queer people, and you guys fucking lost it.
Previously embraced anything gender ideology scaled back their messaging after boycotts and public criticism. Hollywood recognized this too, and they're scaling back with transgender topics that they integrated into so many movies. The pendulum is swinging back.
What? Hollywood is scaling back on transgender people that they integrated into so many different projects? I'm sorry, did I miss the golden age of like trans people in movies? Every movie had trans people? What are you talking about? I'm baffled. Absolutely baffled. Let's actually take a look at the data that came out right. Let's see. This was October 9th. So right before the election. Here, economy most important issue for the 2024 presidential vote. This is from Gallup. Gallup polling, pretty respectable. Here they take a look at the different issues. You have the economy, democracy in the U.S., terrorism and national security, Supreme Court justices, immigration, education, healthcare, gun policy, abortion, taxes, crime, distribution of income and wealth, federal budget deficit, foreign affairs, situation in the Middle East between Israelis and Palestinians, energy policy, Russia relations, race relations, China relations, trade with other nations, climate change, and transgender rights. And literally the issue that the fewest number of people listed as important is transgender rights. In terms of what is motivating people politically in America, it's not this. Now, what are the top issues according to party? Maybe Republicans have a different set of priorities here. Republicans and Republican-leaning independent voters, most important issue is the economy, 66%. Immigration, 63%. Terrorism and national security, 60%. Crime, 52%. Taxes, 46%. Like, trans rights, or rolling them back, is not even in, like, their top range of concerns. Let's take a quick look here. When it comes to what issues conservatives care the least about and find the least important, right? You can take a look at how it stacks up. We have Republicans. There is only one issue that Republicans care less about than trans rights, at least regarding the 2024 elections. And that was climate change. Only climate change was something that Republicans cared less about than trans rights. The narrative that this fueled Donald Trump's election and supercharged it, it's just not accurate to the data we have on what was happening to the Republican electorate in 2024. It was a very convenient narrative for DC consultants to spin, which to explain away Kamala Harris's loss. Oh, she was just too woke. But that was not the reason she lost. Kamala Harris didn't lose because she was too woke. Kamala Harris lost because she was taking economic policy from an Uber executive. Kamala Harris lost because she was cowardly. Kamala Harris lost because, like, she frankly could not live up to the moment and could not mobilize the highly invested forces of the left in order to go to bat for her, because she was also playing defense for a genocide. That's too many things that were gotten wrong. But I want you all to know, this guy's just full of horse shit.
Now, that doesn't mean everything will reverse, but the transgender community is on the defense, and it will be for the next few years. You know, another movement that also lost some of its power in the past couple years was the Me Too movement, which took down a whole lot of men. Now, many of them were completely justified, bad guys who abused their power and got what they deserved. But in hindsight, other cases, like the one against Louis C.K., they're not nearly as clear-cut. In fact...
What? Okay, I could never in a million years have predicted where that was gonna go. Louis C.K. literally would just masturbate at fellow comedians when they came into his room. Like it, genuinely awful shit. I think a lot of people forget how awful Louis C.K. was. Yeah, Louis C.K. is accused by 5 women of sexual misconduct. In 2002, a Chicago comedy duo, Dana Min Goodman and Julia Wolof, landed their big break, a chance to perform at the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival in Aspen, Colorado. When Louis C.K. invited them to hang out in his hotel room for a nightcap after the late-night show, they did not think twice. The bars were closed. They wanted to celebrate. He was a comedian they admired. The women would be together. His intentions seemed collegial. As soon as they sat down in his room, still wrapped in their winter jackets and hats, Louis C.K. asked if he could take out his penis, the women said. They thought it was a joke and laughed it off, and then he really did it. He proceeded to take all his clothes off and get completely naked and start masturbating. In 2003, Abby Schachner called Louis C.K. to invite him to one of her shows. During the phone conversation, she said she could hear him masturbating as they spoke. Another comedian, Rebecca Corey, said that while she was appearing with Louis C.K. on a television pilot in 2005, he asked if he could masturbate in front of her, and she declined. Now, years after unsubstantiated rumors about Louis C.K. masturbating in front of associates, women are coming forward to describe what they experienced. Even amid the current burst of sexual misconduct allegations against powerful men, the stories about Louis C.K. stand out because he has so few equals in comedy. In the years since the incidents the women describe, he has sold out Madison Square Garden 8 times, created Emmy, Miss Corey, a comedian and writer and actress, has long felt haunted by a run-in with Louis C.K. In 2005, she was working as a performer and producer on a television pilot, a big step up in her career. When Louis C.K., a guest star, approached her as she was walking to the set, he leaned close to my face and said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Yes." Miss Corey said in a written statement to the New York Times, "He asked if we could go to my dressing room so he could masturbate in front of me." Stunned and angry, Miss Corey said she declined and pointed out that he had a daughter and a pregnant wife. His face got red, she recalled, and he told me he had issues. Word quickly reached the show's executive producers, Courtney Cox and David Arquette, who both confirmed the incident. "What happened to Rebecca on that set was awful," Miss Cox said in an email, adding that she felt outrage and shock. "My concern, things were going well for me," Miss Corey said in the statement, "and I had no interest in being the person who shut down a production." A fifth woman who spoke on condition of anonymity to protect her family's privacy because she had not been publicly linked to the incident with Louis C.K., also has disturbing stories about an incident with the comedian. In the late 90s, she was working in production on the Chris Rock show when Louis C.K., a writer and producer there, repeatedly asked her to watch him masturbate, she said. She was in her early 20s and went along with his request, but later questioned his behavior. "It was something that I knew was wrong," said the woman, who described sitting in Louis C.K.'s office while he masturbated in his desk chair during a workday, other colleagues just outside the door. "I think the big piece of why I said yes was because of the culture. He abused his power." A coworker at the Chris Rock show, who wished to remain anonymous, confirmed that the woman told him about the experience soon after it happened. But, nothing happened. And just to finish reading up this one, Miss Shatner, a writer, illustrator, and performer, admired Louis C.K.'s work. They had met in the comedy scene. Miss Shatner's former boyfriend was a comedy writer who had worked with Louis C.K. In 2003, when she called Louis C.K. with an invitation to her show, he said he was at work in an office as a writer on the series Cedric the Entertainer Presents, she recalled. Their conversation quickly moved from the personal. Louis C.K. had seen photos of her on her boyfriend's desk, he said, and told her he thought she was cute, to unprofessional and inappropriate, Miss Shatner said. She said she heard the blinds coming down. Then he slowly started telling her his sexual fantasies, breathing heavily and talking softly. She realized he was masturbating and was dumbfounded. The call went on for several minutes, even though Miss Shatner said, "I definitely wasn't encouraging it." But she didn't know how to end it either. "You want to believe it's not happening," she said. A friend, Stuart Harris, confirmed that Miss Shatner had described the call to him in 2003. The idea here that, he didn't really do anything. He didn't really do anything. Also, can we just talk for a second?
Cases, like the one against Louis C.K., they're not nearly as clear-cut. In fact...
Yeah, it's not clear-cut at all. It's just, a rich, powerful man trying to hold women in thrall while he masturbates in front of them. Like a fucking creep. It's not that clear-cut. I want men who think like this. And I know this is maybe cringe, but imagine if a man forced your daughter to watch him masturbate. Would you consider that not clear-cut? Would you consider that like a really nebulous situation? I don't know. I don't think it's really that difficult to untangle. Also, maybe the least surprising thing I could have expected at the end of this video, why were the Nazis so fashionable? Of course this guy stands for Nazi uniforms. Of course.
You could make a good argument that he was actually a victim of Me Too. I learned a lot in producing that video and looking at the specifics. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm active in the comments below, and if you're not being a jerk, I'd love to chat. And if you enjoyed this, subscribe to see more.
Man, I hope you guys appreciated me wading through this. I did not expect us to take a bajillion minutes to cover a 15-minute video, but I think I didn't learn anything, right? He certainly didn't learn anything. It seems like his jam is just kind of making up bullshit. Exactly. But I hope you guys learned stuff. I hope this was valuable to you guys, the viewers. The U is directed at him. I see. Because what was that guy's name? Ken LaCorte. That video is Elephants in Rooms. That's the name of his channel. So, yeah, I god damn, that was a lot.
I just defended a man openly exposing himself to employees and coworkers. Subscribe to see more.
God. It's just I'm actually kind of flabbergasted at how bad this video was. You know? And it's one of the most viewed things from the past couple years about trans people on YouTube, which was interesting to say the least. This guy has almost 800,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's not difficult to defend trans people. We need to demand better from our elected politicians than what Kamala Harris gave trans people in the 2024 election, which was absolutely nothing. And that is what allowed any anti-trans messaging from the Trump campaign to flourish, okay? We need to demand better. And, you know, frankly, I have a lot of problems with Ed Markey running. I think he's old as dirt. But if Ed Markey, someone who is old as dirt, can actually nail pro-trans rhetoric, any Democrat can do it.
Massachusetts deserves better than a senator who scapegoats trans kids to secure political points. Okay. Massachusetts deserves better than a senator who cashes in and who trades stocks in companies with businesses before the very congressional committees he serves on. Massachusetts deserves better than a senator who says universal health care is too much to ask for and that taxing billionaires is class warfare against the rich. I don't trade stocks. I don't take corporate PAC donations. I don't take money from fossil fuel companies. Massachusetts.
Like, this is how you do a progressive campaign that's also pro-trans. It's not difficult. It is not difficult. And I'm not dragging Ed Markey. Like, if he's the progressive in the race, you should vote for Ed Markey, right? But like, damn, I wish he was like 20 years younger, you know? But that being said, other candidates are able to like marshal this too. It is not impossible. It isn't like this pie in the sky idea where like, oh, what you want politicians to like stand up for their constituents who are marginalized? Well, next you're going to be saying you want a rocket ship full of ponies. Like, it's not difficult. It's not an unreachable like bar to have. For elected politicians. On Instagram. Like, here, I want to play this. This is with Tom Steyer here. Many of you probably saw this. But it's not difficult to get these issues correct.
Reels, I saw you guys were talking about me and the support that I had despite all the social media drama. So I found it pretty interesting that you're set on just basically a set choice on where you stand with trans athletes.
I am.
It was nice to just have a straight decision on who you support.
Well, you know, what I always say, and I think I said this to your mom, most people support you 90% of the time, just not the 10% you need them for. If we're going to be on side, then we're on side 100% of the time.
I've been outed like so many times over and over, you know, docs where I go to school. So I feel like more safety aspect and not just supporting, but
protecting.
Protection.
I totally agree. Look, I was saying in this town hall, it's the job of the governor to stand between danger and Californians. And I mean it. And to make sure that people are safe and to protect them from all the malign influences in this world. And I take that super, super, super seriously for you, just so you know. And I'm so proud of you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
So proud of you for succeeding, so proud of you for competing. That's really the point. And I'm gonna hope like heck that you don't just make state, but you do really well there.
Thank you.
Deal?
Deal.
Deal. Congratulations on what you've done as a mom, and congratulations on what you've done as an athlete.
Thank you.
Way to go.
A bunch of winners. Thank you both.
Congratulations. You guys are special.
That's how you do it. It's not hard. It is not hard to support trans people or to support trans youth. It's not difficult. And to the trans people out there who are watching, you are not difficult to love. You are not difficult to love.
I miss Vermin Supreme. Can you get him on the stream, Jack? He's the hero we need now.
No, I can't. Maybe I could, but I have no connection to Vermin Supreme whatsoever. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Like, Tom Steyer is one of the few politicians I have seen, along with Ed Markey, some of the handful of politicians I've seen who are actually willing to stand up and say with their full chest that they support trans people, trans rights, and, like, trans competitors. And it's not a difficult ask. That's a trans kid asking for support, asking for protection, asking for anything, any shred of decency. And Tom Steyer says with his whole chest, we are here to keep you safe. And I take that seriously. I'm going to do whatever I can. So I hope that he wins, gets through the primary process in California tonight. I wish him the best. I know that there is some promising, like the numbers right now where it stands, not looking great, but there are some promising mail-in ballot results that could swing things in his favor to get him through the primary. We'll have to see. But I hope that he makes it. Anyway, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. I'm genuinely curious what your guys' takeaways are going to be on this guy. I haven't covered him before, but maybe I need to pay more attention to some of these folks. We'll see. We'll see. And folks, remember, join your local Dems, join your local DSA, get involved with PV, Progressive Victory. We got a link to them down below as well. If you need help getting involved with your local Dems and your local DSA, reach out on Discord and reach out to GamerG for DSA, reach out to Dragonfly for your local Dems. We want to get you plugged in to the political ecosystem that is available to each and every one of you. And these three orgs are available to each and every one of you to get involved, both with organizing folks in labor, organizing folks in your local political party, and also organizing folks to take concrete electoral action across the United States. It is some good stuff. I highly encourage you guys to check out one or two or all three and to get involved today. Last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. Go check it out. It is comfortable, sexy lingerie, and there's a link down in the description, so check it out. It's non-tucking. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, dating, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.